Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. My name is Jimmy Gitt, and I am your host. And joining me, as always, is my go-to podcast compadre, Mr. Joe Lever. Joe, how's it going, buddy?
Mr. Joe Lever, it's going really well. How are you going, pal?
That's good.
How are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I inadvertently clicked between us too many times, so it was like jump to you, jump to me, jump back to you. So that's something people can look forward to. For people who don't understand, I'm now editing this on the fly. So it presents a fun, chilling challenge. So when people try to talk, I just have to jump over to them. So as you can see, demonstrated here.
You don't need to always jump to me. I mean, just let my voice be heard.
Exactly. And I'll just sit here just like... Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. And yes, we'll always let your voice be heard, Joe. But we love talking about movies and games and TV shows and musics and theme parks and all these things. Did I say musics? I think I did. But this week we're going to get into a little bit of news. We haven't done this in a while. And I didn't report on this initially, but I'm going to now because it's something that I think is important. And it's something that has meant a lot to me in the past, even though maybe I don't have the same type or level of fondness that I used to for this character. Spider-Man, everybody's favorite Spider-Man. Tom Holland's version of it, and Peter Parker will now be rejoining the MCU. Yes, they went away for just a little bit there, and Tom Holland had to go out and say, like, hey, yeah, Sony's got a great vision for the future. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. And they're at Sony, they're like, yeah, Kevin Feige set us on a really good path, and we're going to go forward with that. But it looks like they've come to terms at least for 2 more films. That's right, we're going to get another Spider-Man film coming out in July of 2021, which is not surprising because that's when these movies have been coming out, and they've been doing super duper well. And then also, maybe I'll double check that, but either way, 2021, Spider-Man, and then also he'll be in an unnamed Marvel film coming up, which I couldn't think is anything other than the 5th Avengers or some other crossover type of film.
The 5th Avengers?
Yeah, oh, they got to make a 5th. I mean, because we're on to 4. We've done 4 now, right?
The Avengers, I mean, one's dead. The other one, grew old and retired.
No, it's the new, well, they're new Avengers, like the new Avengers film, right? The new, whatever that. Anywho, I think we talk about it just a little bit, because like I said, Spider-Man has always been near and dear to my heart. I honestly really love the character. And maybe because, we put Iron Man and Captain America in a new regard because of the new movies, or at least for me, I'm not as worried like when Spidey is kind of in flux. But Kevin Feige kind of even said that he is like the only superhero right now with the ability to transverse multiple like cinematic universes, like, because he said, and they're obviously aware that Sony's trying to make their own little Spider-Man universe or Spideyverse. So he said you never know what could come up. And I think one of the things and the caveats that people have been talking about is this, during this deal, kind of figuring out percentages and stuff, that Disney really kind of wanted to roll Venom into the MCU if they could. And I know that's what gets Joe like hot and bothered, is a little of that sweet Venom action. So I don't know if
it's in the MCU, baby.
Yeah, and I'm kind of hoping like it might be kind of a pipe dream, but you know what? They've been building to it for too long. Let's just do it. Let's make this 3rd Spider-Man movie. Now that, spoiler alert, Joe, did you see Spider-Man yet? Did you not?
Yeah.
You saw it. Okay, cool. The ending of that movie with Peter may or may not be known to everybody. Let's do it. Let's do Sinister Six. Let's do Sinister Six and Venom and Spidey team up to fight him. It'll just be like, hey, you know what? We'll be like, Spidey's fought these guys in the past. We're going to introduce a few new ones. They're going to be pretty, like, there's not going to be much to them. I know that, like, Sony always wants to throw a ton of villains in and people always have problems with that. But if, like, MCU is maybe only to get one more shot with Spider-Man, I want them to get a chance at Sinister Six because they're the only people I trust to do it, because I feel like Sony just so desperately wants that to work, and they just can't do it. And it's just like, if anyone's going to do it, it's them, right?
One of the main components of that, and I think you touched on it for a slight smidge, is throwing a ton of villains at something. So if you're going to do Sinister Six, you have to find a way to introduce those villains in a coherent way, in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And not just rush to, okay, here's Harry Osborn, and yeah, he's horrible.
That's true.
Or yeah, here's the rhinoceros guy, I forget his real name, and here he is, and he just hates Spider-Man because.
Sure. Yeah. No.
They got to develop motives for all of them, and kind of, I don't know, take a couple steps up the foundation wall to get on level playing ground. I don't know where I'm going with that. I
I
started
like it.
thinking about construction.
That's okay.
for a second.
Don't you worry about it. All I know, I hear you, and I think a few of them kind of have that. Where we had like a tease at Scorpion in the first Spider-Man. We've had Vulture, which could be a friend or a foe, but he could come back and he could go after Spidey. And there's a few others, and you could bring Mysterio back. I don't think a lot of people would be frustrated with that. Once you start dipping into the idea of illusions, you can really say like, well, actually, he's around and we're gonna have to deal with him. And I just think it'd be so cool. Like I just picture it where it's like your stinger to that clip is kind of like the Suicide Squad, where the ending of that trailer is like Doc Ock walking with like 5 other villains, and it's just like that group shot where it's like, oh my gosh, like they're going for it, because clearly if they can do Guardians of the Galaxy and make that work, I still feel like that for me is just like Marvel saying, we can take anything you've never heard of and make it work. But if you have an established franchise in Spider-Man, they're not going to bungle that. And I just think that's such a high note to go out on, especially for the Spider-Man trilogy. Just like a threat that isn't just a singular threat, but like a big team that's like, oh God, like they're just trying to kill him. Like that's their goal, is to kill Spider-Man. Like, wouldn't that be cool, Joe? Am I crazy? Am I nuts? I mean, a little bit, just this much, but he's all on board, baby. He's on. Hey, Venom's in it. Venom's gonna be back in Spidey. Would you watch it then?
I'll watch it then.
Okay,
watch it then.
That's how we get him. That's gonna be hard though, because not only do we have to introduce like 4 or 5 other villains, but we have to introduce Eddie Brock to being friends with Peter or maybe hating,
but not friends, but not hating each other, but not liking each other, maybe not fond of each other. We'll put it that way.
Well, that way, and this, like, the problem is he's the most likable Peter Parker that's ever existed, and, like, Eddie leaving New York, you wouldn't be like, yeah, I hate that little punk Peter Parker, and I'd be like, what did Peter ever do to you? Like, spill coffee on him once? Like, it should be something stupid at that point. Like, just be like, oh, yeah, he just, he inadvertently tripped over me once, and I've always hated him because he made me late for a job interview or a reporting story or something. I don't know. But
it's got to be something substantial, I think.
Yeah, and also the whole Venom, like, I know they want to do Carnage and stuff with Woody Harrelson, which Woody is an incredible actor. The way they kind of use that, I was like, yeah. So I just want Sinister Six, but more so than all that, I'm still hoping for Green Goblin because it's at my heart, baby. I love Green Goblins just so freaking much. My cousin brought him up the other day, and I was like, I can't believe you brought up Green Goblin. Thank you. I love the Green Goblin. I love him. But yeah, I want to talk about that. Like I said, I didn't want to report on it in the first place because I knew when he left, I was thinking like, he's too big of a property right now. Disney will find a way to play ball because it's just making money for everybody. Like, and yeah, Disney's kind of flexing their muscles right now because they are just slowly taking over the entertainment industry, which is totally fine by me. I mean, look at me. What am I wearing right now? But it's Space Mountain, if you can't tell. It's Space Mountain. But I just was thinking, okay, he's going to come back in one form or another, and I'm interested to see if they can just strike a really strong deal going forward, so that way there isn't this weird, dumb Spider-Man spin-off universe that has Tom Holland in it, but has nothing to do with the MCU. Like, I just think at that point, it's just kind of dumb.
Take something that makes money and make it not make money. That's what you'd be doing.
That's what Sony, I feel like, is about nowadays, and like they're doing like Morbius and stuff, and if they do Kraven and another Venom, it's like, that's great, but like, just find a way to connect all of it, just roll it into the MCU, just get the fact that they have the chance to get on this freaking gravy train that maybe won't have as much gravy as it used to, but still is like the platinum standard for how to make, movies serialized nowadays. I don't know why you just work with it, just be smart, otherwise Disney's gonna just try to buy you. They'll just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna buy you. I just want to buy your face. Yeah, anyway, I want to talk about that for just a second, but let's move over and let's talk about something else. Star Wars, Kevin Feige. Joe, how do you feel about both of those things?
Maybe the one final thing that might make Star Wars interesting, but it's still Star Wars, so I probably won't go see it.
Okay, remind everybody why you don't like Star Wars.
I don't know. I tried to watch them. I couldn't even get, like, I don't know. They just don't capture me that much.
They don't capture you that much. That's all you have to say?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Like laser swords? Do laser swords do nothing for you?
Sure. Those are cool.
How about my boy, Darth Vader?
I mean, some of the outfits are cool. Darth Vader. I mean, yeah, I mean that was probably the coolest part of
Thank you.
any of the Star Wars movies when he starts slashing, slicing, and dicing in that ship.
Oh
And
God, it's like pure Star Wars. I told somebody this recently. They asked me, a friend of mine said like, all right, who's your favorite fictional character of all time? And I like looked in my room. There's two big posters of Darth Vader, and I was like, well, clearly, like, I was like, I don't know, I just love him. He's so compelling. If you ever watch him, Joe, you'll be like, okay, I get why you like him. Plus, he's just a badass. Like, anyway, Kevin Feige potentially helming and kind of moving forward with some Star Wars stuff. I just thought it was interesting because I think of him being so involved and entrenched in Marvel that he can't really step away from it. But we've seen that successfully, or well, maybe not successfully, but to some degree, we see like Jon Favreau, who was, you know, kind of in all the Iron Man stuff, and then Jungle Book, Lion King, and now doing more Star Wars things. So I don't know. Does that, you said that might be the only thing that might interest you in Star Wars? Why is that?
I don't know. It all depends because obviously, I mean, the saga, the whole storyline is done, right? It's ended.
No, this next one should end it, maybe.
Okay, and he gets involved after that one, or he gets involved now to help create that one and make it a springboard for some rabbit hole of a Star Wars property saga, more content.
I don't know. Because what's been happening recently is like they keep doing like all these prequels and like these ones that kind of slot in between other movies. So they could just be like, all right, like, you know, The Mandalorian, for example, it's like, well, let's go between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So like the new trilogy that came out, you know, like number 7. So it's between 6 and 7. So they're like, all right, there's, you know, 20 years or however many years right there, we're going to put something. So I don't know if that necessarily means that they're looking to him for the future, and they're like, hey, how about you plant the seeds here, like J.J. Abrams kind of did, but you're better at it, and like you make you know, is it 10, 11, 12 like incredibly good. I don't remember if I was gonna look up and see what they've talked to him about, but that is just kind of like the news going around right now that he would be involved in that. So, and that might make you excited, maybe.
No, let's be honest. I haven't been able to watch any of them. I've never rushed to the theater to see one. I just, I mean, the old ones, I mean, I guess I can appreciate them for what they are. I mean, for what they did with, you know, CG really wasn't much of anything back then, and they made something pretty artistic, that being said. But I don't know. It's just never been compelling to me. I've tried to watch them. It's just weird stuff, and it's very melting potty with, you know, like, I don't know.
I like it.
It's weird.
I like to think you're like the only person who like didn't get hooked on Star Wars as like a kid, or like your parents weren't necessarily super into it, so they're like, you can watch it if you want to, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it just never got me.
It's still interesting because at the very least, it's Kevin Feige, right? I mean, the guy, like, if he's gonna help develop a new film, he kind of knows what he's doing. But it's after years of like having problems. Because if you go back, I've been looking at this. He was involved in like all those old, like a bunch of the old X-Men movies and stuff. So he like saw how not to do things, and he's like, you know what? If I ever got the chance at this, I'd probably do it better. And clearly he has. So I hope that's kind of a similar thing that he's looking at, where he says like, all right, you know, for people like you, Joe, where it's like, okay, let's say you want to hop into Star Wars, so we're already looking at, you know, 10 plus films. We're looking at a TV show, all this books, all this mythos, all this new stuff, even though they got rid of all the old stuff. It's a lot to jump into. But I feel like with him, what the greatness of the MCU is that, yeah, you could jump in wherever you want. You might be a bit confused, but you still get the gist. Like, you're like, okay, yeah, it's a talking raccoon, but I'm pretty sure he's one of the good guys. You know, like you understand pretty quickly what the goal is. It's not so like political or anything like that, where they have like a ton of people with agendas. It's more so like, yeah, there's superheroes living in the world with us, and how do they function alongside us and for us, and, you know, stuff like that. So that's what to me is interesting, where he could kind of get and just cut back down to like pure, just like, this is Star Wars, like, you know, whatever it's going to be, and it can be more accessible to people moving forward. Not that Star Wars isn't, like, you know, one of the biggest franchises on the planet, but for people like you, maybe it'll be something where you're like, okay, I like this guy, clearly I like the MCU, I would give it a shot, as opposed to somebody else kind of developing this thing, right?
Potentially. I think still a lot of it depends on like the plot at hand and you know, the features, characters, that sort of thing. What was the one, Rogue One? Is that the one where Darth Vader's swinging in the ship and kills people? Yeah, the only good part of that whole movie. Like the rest of it just kind of like
what? You didn't
you
didn't like the rest of it?
I don't know. I
don't you?
maybe
Is it the
my inner
grittiness?
child's slightly dead. I don't know.
No, do you not like the grittiness of like kind of the old looking ships and stuff? Is that part of it? Is it an aesthetic thing?
Maybe.
Maybe,
I don't
but
know.
the prequels look all fancy. And
I don't
shiny.
remember anything from any of them. I remember something about they find this big file room with a big,
Yeah,
and they jump to one of them and pull it out or whatever.
Death Star plans, baby. Got to get those sweet. See, that's like one of my favorite Star Wars films. I love it, but a lot of it is because of Vader. But the rest of that movie, I think it just moves. I like that a lot. It's just it's quick, and it's just like, all right, let's go. Things are happening. It's not like it doesn't plod along like some movies do, where you're like, just freaking go. It reminds me kind of like old Indiana Jones movies, where you're like, all right, this movie knows what it is. It's like, let's go. Yeah, okay, well, fair enough. Well, I thought I'd bring it up either way because I thought it was interesting, and obviously Kevin's like very entrenched with Disney in general, so I'm just excited to kind of see what that comes out of that. And also not Michael Eisner, oh my gosh, Bob Iger, sorry Bob, hi Bob, the guy CEO over at Disney, who won't be forever, but he actually released a book recently, which I thought was kind of interesting, talking about some like behind the scenes stuff, talking about how they were having a hard time getting George Lucas to not only sell his rights over to Star Wars, but to also just even come to the premiere of episode 7. And he was also talking about how they kind of plan the MCU, and he was like, yeah, it was myself, Kevin Feige, Alan Horn, and maybe somebody else, something like that. And then he talked about how the 3 or 4 of them would sit down together and like plot things out. And I was like, this is so like open even before you're like completely done with all of this, but I love it because it's just like, think of the power those guys in a way have, where you're just like, you sit down and you're like, all right, which characters we have access to. And he talked about that too. He's like, if we never had Spidey or X-Men or Fantastic Four, he's like, it was never going to be a problem because we still had like 7,000 plus characters to work with. He's like, he's like, there's plenty of stuff to mine there. And the way he said it, to mine, like he's just like, I'm just like in the mineral business. He's like, and I've got like 40 mines and I don't need like 20 more. I've got plenty. And it was just like, it was so interesting to like hear him talk about that, but just to think about like those meetings where they sit down together and they're just like, yeah, you know, this one might be trending better, or maybe like, oh yeah, we really want to find a way to fold, you know, her into the MCU.
Who took the meeting notes? That's what I want to know.
Dude, like I know it might be a long time, but that is a book I would read, where it's like, all right, so we basically took down 10 or 15 years of just MCU and just like, what was the beginning? And they're like, all right, here's the inception. We want to get to Avengers, and like, where is it? And like, how early was Thanos? Like, you know, because at the end of the first Avengers, I think even Joss Whedon said he kind of threw Thanos in there because he's like, oh yeah, Thanos, this would be a really cool thing for them to do eventually. But like, do you think that happened? And then they're like, all right, we should really consider this character. And then right there, they were like,
well, was that a consideration from the start? Like, we're gonna, you know, what's the word? Pin Thanos at the end of this thing to kind of make a greater evil for the overarching plot?
Yeah, well, I think they always like to have a stinger, or you like to have something a little tease at the end, but I think they just threw him there. And when you go back and look at him, he does look a bit different and all that stuff. So obviously he morphed and changed when they're like, all right, we're making him a big deal. And then I think once you threw him into Guardians, you're kind of like, okay, now we're really getting there. But then once I don't know, I think at that point, once Guardians came around, they were like, all right, this is like obviously the Infinity Stone saga kind of thing. But yeah, I'm right there with you, Joe. Like, I would love to just see who wrote, or if they had like a fifth person just typing constantly. Or
well,
just
that's what I wonder,
ideas,
because all that conversation, it would be really hard to keep up with your own notes coming from a person who has to take notes during meetings that they have to run. I'm speaking about myself. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I wonder how many times like one of them maybe pitched a character or said like, maybe this character should die or maybe this character should live, and maybe Kevin was like, hey, I think it's a really good idea if we do this. So from a story standpoint, like, it's really good to bring them in, but at the same time, if they're coming in, we might not need like if you're bringing Doctor Strange in, and they're not the same, I understand, but if you're bringing Doctor Strange in, he kind of can fulfill a similar personal role or personality role to somebody like Tony Stark in like kind of their, not only their origin, but just kind of their, just who they are as people. So I think kind of making that transition to being like, all right, maybe Doctor Strange now in their meetings, they're like, he might be our new focal point, you know, for some of the stuff, along with Black Panther and Captain Marvel, you know, where you're like, all right, let's figure out our new pillars of the Avengers and kind of work on from there. And I think that's so interesting. And they even talked about Chadwick Boseman being like in Black Panther, and they're like, yeah, we put him in Civil War, but we didn't have any plans to necessarily do a standalone film for him like right after that. And I was like, wow, I had no idea. I was like, I thought that was the plan all along, because when you see him in Civil War, and I still posit that he is maybe the best in Civil War, but he is one of the coolest things about that movie. And when I saw him, I was like, oh, they're clearly like, and they sequel bait at the end, but when they said they originally cast him on, they were like, we weren't sure we were going to do standalone. Now it's like, now it's just, it would be stupid. Like, it's dumb to think that they wouldn't do in a trilogy, you know, like, because now it's like that movie just made crazy money, people loved it, like it's just like an amazing cultural icon. So it's funny how stuff like that works out. Like, they're like, we're putting him in and we'll see how it goes.
It is. I don't think it was, you know, insanely, I don't think it was necessary per se to do a standalone Black Panther. I think the way he was introduced and the way he comes to play in Civil War all kind of works well. He hasn't really been a main feature, but main enough throughout these past films. The thing that's really become an impactful feature throughout these past films, you know, obviously barring Black Panther, is his whole Dora Lamage or whatever, and his whole army. Yeah, that whole. If they wouldn't have done the standalone Black Panther, I would have felt like them coming through like the portals and his army being a big prominent presence throughout in both Infinity War and Endgame. I feel like that would have been a little more of like a jolt or know, like a okay, yeah, you know, because you have no background on it that, you know, he's got this nation and this really sophisticated military and all that stuff. So having that background really helped to kind of make that more of a prominent feature, you know, when they're coming through the portals or when they're, you know, standing their ground in Wakanda. And, you know, if they never would have done a solo film for him, would they have had that major battle scene in Wakanda?
Probably not. And I also think, like, if we say like that Black Panther might not be as necessary. I look at some of like the sequels where like Iron Man 2, Thor: The Dark World, like some of those definitely aren't necessary, or just kind of like,
for sure,
you know, it's just like that's the serialization of the thing. And I think
the Dark World, Thor: The Dark World did bring us the ether, which is the reality stone at the end of the day. I'm so
impressed by that, and I love that was like a pretty big sticking point for Endgame, because it almost like they had to do it, but it's just so funny to be like the most like maligned, like hated MCU film, and it's like they almost said, yeah, you gotta go watch it though. Like they're like, if you haven't seen it, you probably should still go watch it.
Why is that?
Why is what?
Why should you have seen Thor: The Dark World?
Oh, because I say, like, if you want to understand the Infinity Stones, like that, I think it's one of the movies that focuses solely like around an Infinity Stone.
Oh,
so
sure.
That's why those were like when I made that video a while ago talking about which ones you have to see. I think it's good to see that one, even though you don't really see the Reality Stone in that one use like the trick that Thanos uses where he can like make a reality happen. Like they didn't really do that in that movie.
Yeah, and they don't play up those abilities that way. It's more solely based on the Dark Elves or whatever wanting to make the world black or whatever.
Well done.
Which I don't think it's a bad film.
Oh no, it's not.
I don't think it's bad. I thought it was actually pretty decent, but I like they basically they don't come right out and say it, but knowing what you know about, you know, its abilities now, you go back and it's like, okay, so the Dark Elves weren't really tapping into all its abilities; they were just using it to, you know, make everything dark.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, and he barely gets it towards the end. And I think a reason they kind of held back on some of the abilities of the stones, which clearly like the Tesseract, even you see Thanos use that in a lot of different ways. they were just kind of like, all right, well, let's not give this thing too many powers in these other movies. So that way, once it comes time where he gets the whole gauntlet, you're not going to be like, all right, so he already has like six stones or whatever, and they all have like 4 or 5 different abilities because the movies were like, oh, it can do this, and you're like, okay, you can't like just give him like 1 or 2 things. Maybe don't even explain
the Tesseract.
Them, you know?
What were the abilities of that stone?
Okay.
What is the actual name of that stone?
So the Tesseract, which is the Space Stone, I know this because I wanted to do a video on this, but the Space Stone. So the 2 biggest things that the Tesseract, or 3, I guess, that it can do. It can make it can make teleportals, you know, it can make big portals and stuff. It can do that. Space. It can make things intangible, and we saw that when he used it on the Hulkbuster, and the Hulkbuster just like went through him like at Thanos and like went into the rocks. And he also uses it on Loki before Loki stabs him in the chin to like it's like telekinesis, like he does it and it just stops him. So I don't know. And that was just 1 stone. It's like, and it looked like a cube, but then it wasn't a cube. And then you look at something like, is it the Mind Stone that Vision has that basically is just like a laser beam, but probably does more than that?
So that one's always kind of, you know, put me into a conundrum too. Like, okay, Vision had the Mind Stone. I guess it makes sense because it made an AI thing more, you know, it gave it a have you ever bumbled over words as bad as this?
I like it.
It gave an AI system the ability to like grow and learn and change and develop and consider, you know, rationale and all that good stuff. But
and wear cardigans.
Beyond that, what's its importance to the gauntlet besides he can do the snap? Other than that, is it really worth having? With the rest of them, you can do whatever you want still.
Well, I was thinking about that the other day because like it's good that he like in Infinity War like kind of wins because think about it, if you still got like 4 or 5 of those things, maybe you couldn't snap and do whatever you wanted. But there's not really much that you couldn't do like yourself. It's just like it takes some time, but like you got the time stone, so really time's on your side. And I feel like that one is still the scariest of them all because it's just like, what are the limitations on this? And then Doctor Strange is like, you don't want to mess with time, and it's like Thanos is like, yeah, I don't really care. Like he's just like, I'm just gonna use it. But it's interesting. It's fascinating to see like how all that, and they're, you know, talking about not only the superheroes, but then like that was a consideration in those meetings too. They're like, all right, we want to get to Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War. What are these stones? What do they do? Where are we going to place them in these movies, and how are they going to coalesce? Like
that's an interesting thing in its own. That's even probably more detailed than some of the characters that they draw upon. I mean, the way those all came together and kind of had their own little pigeonhole in every movie. It's pretty awesome. I just feel like what a job, you know. Like I know it's not easy, but how creative and fun is that to sit down at a conference room table, probably a nice cup of Joe, and go to town on coming up with cool ideas like that. That would be.
I know, it's just that's like my dream job, but also I want to be in it, and I would be so bad at this because I would be like, all right guys, how are we gonna get Ghost Rider in the MCU? They'd be like, hey Jimmy, we talked about this, like they've had 2 movies before this, we've got him in the TV show, we're giving him his own TV show. I'd be like, yeah, but I want Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider back. They'd be like, but Nick Cage. I'd be like, no, new, can we do new? They'd be like,
everybody's forgotten about him. That was 2007. Come on.
Yeah, it's like they'd be like, you got to move on. There are other new bankable heroes, and I'd be like, but Ghost Rider, like I feel like
Ghost Rider is bankable. Like him, you know, featured in one. Maybe not so much standalone. Like we don't really need that. But him featured in one, like, okay, it's kind of a dry spell during the fall, especially for Marvel and stuff. Maybe you get one offshoot in November or something. Like I think Captain Marvel. When was Captain Marvel?
That February? Was March because it was bookended right between like it was tucked in there.
But typically, what do you get in like October?
Usually nothing. I think the last thing we had like for November, they had Thor: The Dark World a long time ago, and then I think Doctor Strange. So for a while, I thought they were gonna just relegate
Thor Ragnarok.
Thor Ragnarok, I think, came out in May. So here's what they do, Joe, is they drop those kind of mystical ones in November where they're like, it might not perform super well in the summer months, but let's make it be strong here. And then we'll make the sequel. We'll put that in May. So I think the next Doctor Strange is going to be in May because I think Ragnarok was May. I could be wrong. It could be like August or something. But usually that's what they do. If they're like, we're not so sure about this one, we'll put it right before Christmas and it'll make some money. And then we'll have a big audience for the next one and then be like, Doctor Strange 2, baby. Here it comes out in
Well,
May. You know,
I happen to feel like September,
April.
October. Gosh, that's a good time to be in the theater. Like I found myself this past weekend even looking for a nice movie to go see, but
Yeah,
lo and behold, there's really nothing out there.
I think it's
But
the horror
think
season.
about Ghost Rider and some other hero. Like it could be like a semi standalone, but make it more of a horror-y vibe,
Don't even get me
Marvel
started.
style.
Yeah, well, that's because
Oh,
they
it
need to
could be
do.
so cool.
Okay, if they're working on Blade, Joe, here's the new goal. They'll call it. It's called Marvel Knights, and it's usually a group of kind of like the edgelord, heroes. But it's like Blade, Ghost Rider, Punisher, people like that, where it's like people who kind of are not really afraid to like kill, but they're heroes still. Get to that movie because you drop like a Marvel Knights movie in like October with like Ghost Rider and Blade working together. Like,
Dude.
how badass would that? Like, just
Dude.
legit, just like. Like, oh my god, it's a vampire and a flaming skeleton fighting a bunch of monsters. Like
Music to my ears.
right?
Come on.
That's
Marvel, you're missing something here.
that's where I would be. I would be too focused on that, and they'd be like, "We need to talk about She-Hulk," and I'd be like, "I don't want to talk about She-Hulk." They'd be like, "We need."
If you bring it up again, I swear to God, I'm out.
Exactly. Well, and Kevin Feige, I guess recently, I had a friend say this, so I can't confirm, but he'd said something. He's like, "Oh, it'd be cool if we could do like a Hulk versus Wolverine or Wolverine versus Hulk movie," and I still like I dream about that because I watched that animated little movie recently.
I don't want to pit them against each other. Eventually, one has to win or something has to interject, right?
Well, it's like Batman versus Superman.
I mean, Hulk wins, right? Hulk wins.
I mean, yeah, it's like, or it just goes on forever. But it's usually like they fight it first, and then they're buddies. There's always like another threat that comes on. You're like, oh, they were misunderstood.
Yeah. But in Wolverine has to like temporarily die. Like, okay, he heals back and comes back, but he dies again. And I mean, it's like because he has to regenerate. It's not like a.
Yeah, I think it's also one of those things, and I remember this joke from the second Marvel Ultimate Alliance where Hulk was saying he's like Hulk like Logan, Hulk like Logan not man that break forever, like Logan fixed himself, like he's only man to do so, and I think that would be such a funny like part of it. It's a little bit like of Thor and Loki in Ragnarok where they kind of work together because they're demigods, and Thor can chuck Loki like a sack of potatoes. But just think about like Hulk using Wolverine in like a battle situation that if he throws Wolverine, if he threw anybody else, they'd die. And like Logan knows it as he picks him. He's like, "Don't do this to me." And he's like, his only way, and like chucks him. Like there's comedy gold in there, but also like really badass, like back to back.
The problem is Hulk is too smart now, and
they gotta dumb him down again, like because they're not gonna get any like Hulk versus movie unless like he.
To be honest,
his mind.
The way Hulk was used in Endgame. And this is us sitting at that conference room table coming up with all these ideas on the marker board. The way Hulk was used in that movie was pretty lame. I feel like if they would have done most of those things, minus the cafe scene, Bruce Banner at the cafe. Hulk is still Hulk, maybe to the abilities of Ragnarok, dumb 3-year-old. But I wouldn't mind if I don't want him talking like that. I don't want him to be some literate. I want him to be still beastly and still the monster, the good monster, right? But I would have liked to have seen it maybe more like Bruce's, established almost full control to where, he's able to. He's not turning into Professor Hulk, but when he turns into Hulk, he's able to actually utilize him for, objectives instead of just releasing him and go ape crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it would have been cool if, he turns into the Hulk and he's able to do the gauntlet thing and all that. I think that would have been much more. I know it's a subtle thing and maybe a minute complaint, but I just feel like it maybe would have been more profound in my eyes personally if it would have been that way.
Sure.
Plus, it makes you more attached to the character that is the Hulk, right? Bruce Banner. What's the actor's name again?
Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo. I mean, it's him. Come on.
Yeah. No.
I want him in the movie too.
Yeah, and they kind of do that too, like where they have like he gets like his spirit knocked out of Hulk, which I thought at that moment when the Ancient One did that, and like when they're going back in time to like
I thought it'd
Avengers.
for sure be Mark Ruffalo,
Well,
not the Hulk.
I knew it was gonna be Mark there, but I wanted the Hulk, like the body of it, to just be like, oh, it's just pure Hulk now, and he just goes like full rage, like World War Hulk mode. But you said something really good. It's like you want him to be beastly.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't want him to be is Beast from X-Men, because that's basically what they turned him into. They're like, all right, let's take a super intelligent, super strong guy who's kind of socially awkward. That's Beast. Like, that's the problem, is like now that they've got X-Men, they can't really keep him around, because it's like, all right, so we're gonna have two, and not that Beast is the same strength as Hulk, guys. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got a guy who's got like kind of animalistic tendencies, really strong, looks a little different, but is also like has PhDs and everything. You can't really have two of those people, and like, I don't know, it's not as compelling. Like, so just get a good Beast, get Kelsey Grammer, and then you bring in Rage Hulk, because World War Hulk is what I would be. That's what I wanted so badly to be for the last bit of this Avengers. Not only beating up Thanos, but like I want an Avengers film where it's like Civil War again, but like they have to fight their best asset, which should be the Hulk. He's not really their best asset, but it should be. And I want it so badly to be like he's the reason some of them die. Because if you have a hero that legit kills other heroes, that's like a ripple effect. Now, Civil War still had it, and they did a really good job talking about how like that like movie didn't have to kill anybody to kind of really, bring that point home. But like,
not true. Stark's parents had to die.
That's true, Joe. I'm so impressed. But like Hulk, like just think about that. If he killed one of the Avengers, like that would be just like what would you do? Like that's such a cool, like if the hero really becomes the villain. That's so cool to me. That takes that Dark Knight idea and kind of twists it a bit, like truly, like, man, that sounds good to me. I don't know. I just love Hulk. I love Wolverine. I love Ghost Rider. But those are just
too.
My
they
guys.
Just kind of turned them into something a little less appealing to me in my eyes.
Yeah, some of them. But either way, like I think the idea of sitting in at those meetings that Kevin was at with Bob and everything, like that's just such a like the amount of power again, just of the mentality of the thing is so cool. And not to be like, yes, they have all the power. It's just like you're gonna entertain and delight and potentially piss off millions of people. Like, and you're gonna sit there and be like, all right, here's the idea we have. This might not be exactly how we follow it, but here, let's lay out the roadmap. We might have to switch things in and out. Spider-Man's in, cool. Let's put him in Civil War. Like they just kind of X-Men are in, sweet. Let's start working them in. Fantastic Four, cool. Like because at first you got to know they had a version of this that had none of that. They're like, all right, if we never get any of those guys, what are we gonna do? Like it's not like they're just like, okay, after Endgame, it's just nothing. Like they've had a plan. Like they have a plan. There's not, or at least I think they do. If Black Panther didn't have a standalone movie right after Civil War in their heads already, or when Chadwick Boseman was cast, I just like, maybe they don't. I just like to think they have a plan, because it seems like up to this point they have, and that's why I'm excited about Star Wars, because Kevin's got a plan, baby. So I'm really hoping maybe he's got a plan. I hope he has a plan. Kevin, please have a plan. I would appreciate that. Joe, do you have anything else you want to say about good old Kevin?
I want Ghost Rider and I want Venom.
Okay, we'll make it happen. Well, that Hulu TV show, Robbie Reyes is fine. I just want classic Johnny Blaze, and maybe they'll bring him into this one too. I just want Ghost Rider is not just a TV character though. I think he's bigger than that, and that's maybe just my own personal bias. I've got a freaking big poster of him right here, but I just would really like to see that cool character come into it. And now with all the mysticism and stuff that they're really kind of leaning into more, I'm really hoping that's the case, because Ghost Rider, it's just too pretty of a face to put away. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you can't just put that guy in the dark. You gotta bring him out to the light. Oh God, I really want to be Ghost Rider. I know I probably won't be, but please, I will do it for free. Well, maybe like a couple of dollars and some sandwiches. But yeah, mostly free. Anyway, Joe, we had an idea for something we were gonna do this week, but because we didn't have a lot of news, but we kind of been talking for a while, so I think we're pretty good. So I think it's time to move into that segment of the show that I like to call, that you like to call, that we like to call
Time Killers?
That's right, it's time for Time Killers. It's games we're playing, the TV shows we're reviewing, the movies we've been watching. Did I say that all correctly? Anyway, Joe, what have you been doing? What have you been killing time with there, buddy? Yeah.
Oh, what have I been killing time with? I recently watched the movie. Oh, what's it called? Seth Rogen and...
Long Shot.
Yes.
Did you like
Wow.
it? Do you like that? I'm impressed even with myself here.
Dude. I thought, okay, it actually got decent reviews. Like, they weren't that bad. It was like 4 something stars out of 5. And I was buying off the Xbox Microsoft store. Um, I rented it, to be clear. But
To be clear, I did not purchase this film.
I must say, Charlize Theron is an admirable actress. She's good. No matter what she really does, she's good.
I can't believe you're saying that because when I watched this and I watched it recently, I was thinking the exact same
You
thing.
watched it too?
I did. So I was thinking she was in Mad Max, shaved her head, had like one arm or whatever, and that's her. But then she's in this one, and she could be so likable, but then she could be like the evil queen in Snow White and stuff. And you're just like, she's so good. And then you watch Italian Job, like kind of at the beginning of her career a little more. It's just like she's just a really freaking. She's just good. She's just
Atomic
good.
Blonde.
Atomic Blonde, yeah. She's the reason to watch this movie. Like a lot of people, Seth Rogen's fine. Don't get me wrong, but anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you got a point there. I think that's true. Seth Rogen in his own right is kind of good. I mean, they had to capitalize on the comedy of it, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes, and it wasn't bad, but sometimes they take the title of the movie and they're like, guys, it really is a long shot.
Exactly.
Because they make him do some of the most doofus things I've ever seen in my life. Like, you took a movie that was doing well, it was funny, and everything was jiving. It seemed like, okay, all right, I get it. And you made him seem so doofusy that there was no realistic way in frozen over cold as icicle hell that this would ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it still happens. I really had no problems with it except for that. There's a few things that he does, and I'm not going to go back and rehash them or anything, that are just so downright obscenely stupid that I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So, but the movie as a whole is worthwhile. I mean, you chuckle a few times, you laugh out loud a few times, and I think there's actually some quality there. It's actually kind of good.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't have much more to say. It's just kind of funny.
You got a rating for us, or do you recommend it?
I mean, there's 4 out of 5 stars. I'd probably give it, like, let's call it 1 to 10. I'd give it probably a strong 7.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta categorize it a little bit because I mean I've given some other pretty stellar blockbusters a 7 and called it decent. This, I think, in the category it is a 7. It's I think it's a pretty boisterous call.
Yeah, did the missus like it?
She did. She was laughing. She thought it was actually pretty good.
Good.
Judge the book by its cover, and I think Seth Rogen deters some people more than he attracts.
Sure.
And I think even for those who don't like him might have appreciated it a little bit.
Sure.
There are a couple crude moments.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but for the most part, still pretty funny and enjoyable. And, her whole thing is she's Secretary of State, right? And then she wants to run for president. And they kind of do a good job of playing that role.
Yeah, totally.
And, the flying around and the events and such and the people. And I don't know.
Did you notice Andy Serkis?
I did.
I did too. I
He's
waited
the
till the end.
guy that wanted
like,
FaceTime with her, man.
Yeah, I was like, that can't be. And when I was watching how he moved, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, I thought that guy looked a little phony, like not phony, but
not
like
old dude, like he's dressed up to be. Yeah, I thought I was like, what? What are you doing?
But the way he talked, I thought back to that too. I was like, yep, it's him.
That's him. Got him.
Yeah, got him.
Got him. I'm still angry at Seth Rogen because he did like a little thing before Avengers, and he's like, "Hey, everybody in the theater, like at my movie theater, he's like, I know you're excited to watch Avengers Endgame, but maybe give the long shot a shot some other time." And I was just like, "You got to get off the screen, otherwise people are gonna kill you." Like, and it was obviously it's a pre-recorded thing, so yeah.
That's funny. That's funny because was it released around the same time?
I think so, and it was like. It's so funny because they must have struck some deal, or maybe I don't know who made this movie, but it's just so funny to think that like, hey, I know everybody's gonna watch this movie, but if you don't, I mean, if you want to watch another one in the next couple of months or something, like my movie's out, no big, but like if you want, that'd be cool. I'd enjoy it.
I can't remember if that happened for mine too. I wonder if he had something worked out with Disney and they thought, oh, that's a clever thing. That'd be funny because he was doing Lion King for him. Right?
I wonder if that was like part of it.
Funny little deal they did.
I was thinking that too, and I get a kick sometimes when you have like an actor, actress, or one of the directors before the movie, and they're just like, yeah, thanks for coming to the movie theater, we appreciate it, and everyone's like, okay, that's nice that they did this, but then you're like. Especially for Endgame, I think it was at that moment where everybody in the theater hadn't seen it, so it's just like, hey, let's go. Like, spoilers, my phone. I'm going to check my phone, and I'm going to spoil the whole film. So, like, come on. But yeah, so that's why, and Long Shot's not a movie you'd see in the theater. At least for me, it's not like one that, like, you have to see in theaters. Like, you could see it there, it'd be fine, but it was like, oh, it's pretty good. You watch it at home.
I mean, you still get the movie theater experience, but I think it's a good, rent it online and watch it at home kind of a thing, cuddle up, that type of deal.
Agreed. My time killer is pretty brief though. More Monster Hunter. Finished up the campaign of Iceborne, which is amazing. Go play it immediately.
Same, but haven't finished it.
Yes, we're still working on it for you. Red Dead Redemption 2, hopped back in a little bit with Joe. We're playing a little bit of that. It's just, that game is mostly just fun to kind of just roam around, and I guess I don't really care too much about completing things and doing things, but at the same time...
I kind of do. Like, we were doing some bounties, and I was like, I don't mind meandering around and finding little, like, side things or taking out a hideout. That's fun, but... I remember we did one time where we had to retrieve this wagon, something or other, and there was this hideout, and it was a hideout that was kind of substantial and kind of rubble buildings around and whatnot. I wish some of their bounties were a little more involved.
Sure.
Or maybe a two-part type of deal or something.
Yeah, a lot of it's like find a person with 4 or 5 other people, and you start shooting people, but that person runs away, so you have to catch them and then take them in.
Yeah, and that's the gist of it. I wish it was a little more complex than that. I wish, and maybe we just haven't got there or found these types of missions, but I want something more like a heist from Grand Theft Auto, something a little more complex or like steps to it.
Yeah,
I think that would be fun.
Let's just say if they do have them in the game, then it's on them at this point for not making them easier to access or easier to find.
Yeah, or maybe there's a progression, something or other. You can't do certain things until you get to this point. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
I just don't. I think with an online, like, you just can't be oddly restrictive because you're gonna have people like us who really enjoy your game and think it's so cool, but we'll burn out if there isn't like. The carrot on the stick is not as good as just the enjoyment of a fight in Monster Hunter. So it's like, unless you're going to have some repetitive thing that's so much fun that I don't care if I'm even progressing, then for me, it's like I can mosey, but I do get bored. So I start to think like, oh, I wish I was accomplishing more. But in either case, with video games, it's just like what you feel you've accomplished or take away from it. So yeah, it's tricky. But just getting back into that a little bit, and I'm excited to hop into Ghost Recon coming up this weekend, I believe, because it's coming out, because we couldn't get into the beta for the life of us this weekend, even though we played the other one. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to pull the trigger, so to speak, on Gears of War 5. I just need to find a campaign buddy, so I'm just looking for that. Not that I need one, but Gears is so much better with a friend.
Have you guys ever heard of a subtle hint?
Oh, no, I just meant in general. I know that you aren't necessarily... I know you got kind of burned on Gears 4, and it's funny because I've had other people who watch the show. They're like, Joe would really like Gears 5 even more than Gears 4. And I was like, yeah, we'd have to get the Games Pass for like a month, and that's how we'd do it. Like, we wouldn't both buy Gears. We'd just be like, Games Pass.
Yeah, Gears 4 was okay. I know Drew even played that with us when it came out. That was, a couple years ago. Yep. And we had fun, and the whole Horde mode was kind of entertaining and whatnot, but eventually you just kind of get to that point where it's like,
no, I get that. Yeah, I think if we had a dedicated team of like 4 or 5 to do Horde, and then you just be like, all right guys, we're playing on this map tonight, we're going to build here instead tonight, and it's always going to be a little bit different. And Joe he's really classed up on recon, and like that's what he wanted to do, so he's going to be our sniper and stuff like that. I think like you have to really kind of like invest the time to get it out. Whereas Monster Hunter, you don't. It's not like, all right, Joe, if you're switching from the lance to the hammer, you got a lot of work to do. It's like, no, you just have to have the money and the resources and just learn either on the fly or just
I
take a few
think
minutes.
that's and I worry that I might. I don't worry too much. I mean, there'll always be something for me to look at or concentrate on. But I feel like sometimes I'm like, man, is there anything else I'd want to make, or am I interested in this? And I'm like, oh, if I made that, I got to go so far back and harvest these little things, and it seems like such a chore.
Yeah.
I wonder if I'll ever run out of, because I think a lot of the fun in that is the progression and like, oh, I want to get this to make this. And I think that it's like your incentive. And it's like, I want to go hunt this because I want this piece. And
Carrot on the stick.
That's fun.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wonder, am I ever going to hit that? I mean, I know you can hit that cap, but I wonder if I'll get to that point where it's like, well, there's nothing else I really want, or there's nothing else in the, in the weapon tree that I'm interested in. Eventually it's going to have to be, okay, well, I've done all these. I've got great sword. I've got bow. I've got hammer. I've got insect glaive. I've got a long sword. What do I want to branch off and start trying more?
Yeah.
I think that's the only way to keep it really gears turning for me. But
I just think, well, they add new monsters, and then they add new weapons because of the new monsters. Right.
Exactly. And when they do that, that kind of reinvigorates it enough to like carry it for another 3, 4, 5 months.
Yeah, or just add a new event, or add the Leshen, or add Behemoth, and just add a new thing that's so hard you're just like, ugh, you're like gonna die over it. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited about the future of this game, and I'm just excited about that franchise. And I might be making a video soon about the future of Monster Hunter. Because will they make a sequel? Of course they will. Like, it's not even a question. It's just money.
I think they need a grapple, Jimmy.
They need a grapple. Yeah. See what I tell you, man. It's like they listen to me. They're like, hey, we're gonna add this new mechanic that's gonna kind of not change the whole game, but really make it even better. And it's like, now I don't even know what we were doing before the grapple. I'm like, how did we wound parts? And they're like, he didn't. And I'm like, huh. I like wounding things. Running monsters into walls feels so good. I got a kill on an Anjanath. There was a Fulgur Anjanath in the arena with that thing. He was like, smashed his head. It was like, I was like, yes. I still jump when I get a slay, like on a new monster. I'm like, yes. Like today when I finished it, I was like,
get a little.
Yeah. It's the only game that makes me really fist pump a lot. I'm like, I love it. All right, Joe. Guess what? It's time for everybody's favorite segment, mine especially. We're talking about community feedback.
Feedback and questions.
I'm going to make a timestamp here. Don't worry about it, everybody. If you're just listening to this, it doesn't matter to you. I got to, change the screens quick. Don't worry about it. Don't even worry your face. It's fine. We're not even going to look at this stuff. Okay. Joe, are you ready for it? Baby, here's our question.
Always ready.
Here's our question today. This one comes in from our good friend Missile Mage. Joe, you know Missile Mage, don't you?
I do. I do.
Missile Mage asked this in the Discord, but if you ever want to get a hold of us on Twitter, just #CriticalPodcast at us. But he said, the recent release of the remake of Link's Awakening was for $60 and had a real lack of criticism regarding the price point. Joe, do you know what Link's Awakening is? Don't worry about it. It's an older Zelda game that they remade, and it's really cute, and everybody really seems to enjoy it. So don't worry about it. But he says, I know it's really difficult to remove bias when covering certain things, especially when something is so beloved. My question is, does that bias matter at all if the people are enjoying what they are getting? So one more time, does that bias matter at all if the people are enjoying what they are getting? Like that bias of the past and also these price points and things. Like saying, hey, it's a remake of a game, it shouldn't be. Like, some remakes should be $60, some remakes shouldn't be, like, full price or remasters, stuff like that. So, do you think it matters if people are enjoying it and they're willing to pay the price?
If what matters?
The bias. The bias of the bias matters of, like, removing that bias when covering certain things. Like, when it's, like, do you need to, like, does it matter anymore? All right, one more time for you, Joe.
Yes,
I know I knew I was going to have to say this one to you a few times. I know it's really difficult to remove bias when covering certain things, especially when something is so beloved. My question is, does that bias matter at all if people are enjoying what they're getting? So he's saying that people are loving this game. They're loving it so much, and they're willing to pay the price for it. And there's a bias there because they just enjoy it so much that they're not going to critique it as hardly, or like the price point as difficult as maybe other games.
Here I'm thinking you're talking about like, okay, game reviewers have bias towards it because there's nostalgia factor.
I mean, there might be some of that. There might be plenty of that too. And I could be butchering this question or interpreting the question that he sent in, but that is how he wrote it, so that's how we will go with it.
I feel like game reviewers and stuff, or IGN and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's got to be some pride in that, regardless of the game. It's a through and through unbiased look at it, right?
They try to, right?
I guess so. So, does it matter if a review is biased and people buy it and they still like it?
That's one more time. I'm going to read one more time for you. So the first part, the recent release of the remake of Link's Awakening for $60 had a real lack of criticism regarding the price point. So some people might have said, oh, it shouldn't be $60. Maybe that's it. Or maybe
it's not. Maybe that's a new game.
Yeah, it's remaking an old game, but it's kind of not 2D. It's kind of like 3D, but like on a 2D-ish kind of like isometric view. Anyway, whatever.
Okay.
But he says, I know it's really difficult to remove bias when covering certain things, especially when something is so beloved. So it's hard to get rid of something like if I review Gears, it's gonna be hard for me because I love Gears. But he says, my question is, does that bias matter at all? If people are enjoying what they are getting, so that bias. So like you're like, I love this game and I loved the original game, and that's gonna play into the review. But does that bias matter if people?
Who's doing the reviewing here?
Everybody. He said the problem is like the lack of criticism. So I'm guessing he's talking about critics and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I think lack of criticism means it's a decent game. So price point be what it is. It's a new game. So be it. I mean.
Sure. I wonder too, honestly, I like having biased people. I just want them to I think in front of every review or at the end of every review, it'd be cool if someone put up just like a little graphic or something that's just like, these are the games I love. These are the games I hate. So like for me, if I put that up and I was like, I love Gears of War, I love Pokemon Snap, and I love Final Fantasy 15 or something like that. Missile Mage already hates me because he hates that game. Doesn't hate it. Whatever. Missile Mage, you can feel about that game however you want. But and then I'd say hates games be like, oh, I dislike Bloodborne. I'm not a huge fan of Metal Gear Solid. And then a game comes out that's like Metal Gear Solid or Bloodborne or Dark Souls or whatever. They'd be like, okay, clearly at the beginning he has a bias towards these games. He's going to try to be as fair as he can, but that bias will still be there because that's what he personally enjoys. So I think everyone's got bias. You can't get rid of it. That's just because we're human beings. You try to be as unbiased as you can. But the fact that you even like video games in the first place is that's a conceit. And then the conceits keep going because you're like, well, if you don't like big monsters, then you might not like Gears of War, or something like that. So I think it's okay. It's okay if there's not a lot of criticism behind something. If it's beloved, ubiquitously. What?
Plus, in a game like that, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and that's why I think reviews, they come in different shapes and forms and sizes and all that stuff. And usually a remake is just like the same storyline, same beats for the most part as the original. Not always the case, but so like Final Fantasy VII Remake that's coming up, it's not going to be the whole game right away, but they're going to have to review that game not only as a remake, but also as a chunk of a full game, even though this game is going to probably still be many hours long. I don't envy people who have to do that. I'll probably try to do that, but everybody's going to review that in a different way and have different bias. Did you play the original at all? Have you never heard of it? Do you like big swords and you cannot lie? You know what I mean? If you never played Link's Awakening in the first place, you might be less biased towards it. Or maybe you saw it back in the day and you hated it, or you saw a friend play it and they wouldn't let you play it, and then you're like, well, I kind of hate that game and I never got to play it, so I don't want to play it. Or something, or you get the chance to finally play it and you love it. I don't know. There's no way to state bias at the beginning of every review. I get that. But I think it'd be kind of cool if we did even just a few. Those would be broad strokes, right? But it'd be so cool to just be like, yeah, I love those types of games. But a lot of these review sites, Joe, you mentioned IGN, they sometimes they'll have freelance reviewers and stuff too, but they usually have and there are other smaller groups that do this too. They're like, he's our JRPG guy, or he's our strategy guy. And like those people typically tend to like those types of games. So the hope is like you bring that person in who has that knowledge and can interpret the game a little more efficiently than someone. So like you're not making the strategy like PC player play like a JRPG and they've never played one before. So
possibly has a better critical eye for that type.
Exactly,
right?
And they could either be more lax on it, but they also could be way harsher on it. And usually the people who like love like a certain thing are going to be way harsher on it. Like for instance, like after now playing a ton of Monster Hunter, if I go play Dauntless and there are things I don't like, I might see things and they're like, oh, Monster Hunter should do this, or I'll be like, wow, they need to get all these things that Monster Hunter has because it is in the monster hunting genre. Like, but I don't know, I haven't played Dauntless. But that's kind of that's the trick. So you have that bias because you're like on a team and you're like, you're that guy. You are the one to do that. Or if you're like a solo person, like you look at Angry Joe, like I kind of know the games he likes, but at the same time he plays a ton of different games and there are different biases towards that. And then the bias is put on top of like if they have microtransactions, if they have shady business deals in it, he's going to call it out and it's going to detract from his viewpoint of the game and the price of it. Yeah. So it's so tricky. Games are like such a weird like thing to be into because they're so different. Like all of them are just so different. Like, and that's so cool though. Like I love it. I love the diversity. So that's okay. You can be biased. Try to check it if you can, if you're going to review something. But if people are loving it and people are having a good time, I say let a good thing be a good thing, right? We don't have to like rake every game over the coals and be like, well, it doesn't have this or that or this or that. If people are loving it, if you're out there playing Link's Awakening, kudos to you. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're just jolly, big smiling face the whole time. All right, Joe, do you have anything else to say about this?
I don't. I would like to apologize for my lack of understanding.
Don't apologize. I was confused too. I read it before we even started and I was like, I think I'm going to talk it out with Joe. And we're going to talk it out and it's going to be good because Mitchell Mage is like, he stumped us. He stumped us a little bit. Yeah. And that's okay. It's good. We're talking it out. I didn't like edit this down.
Congratulations.
So congratulations. You made us feel bad about ourselves. Yeah. And he's probably going to like write it next week and be like, you didn't even answer the question I sent in. And I'll be like, that sounds about right. Send it in smaller words. Just smaller sentences. That helps. Like, game good, game bad. I'd be like, game good. Like, yeah, thank you. Really bringing the show down here. Anyway, if you guys ever have a question or a topic or just a little game that we could play here on the show, not a game like a video game in general, but we love recommendations too. All you have to do, take the hashtag Critical Podcast, it's just one word, and you can just tweet it at us. You can tweet at our official account, which is @GoCritical, or you can tweet at me personally. I'm JimmyGood013. All right, JimmyGood013, like 013, because 13 is just the best number. I love it so much. But Joe, where can they find you?
Lever_627. That's Lever just like Beaver, only with an L.
Excellent, wonderful. If you want
to Levi, if they want to reach you, where can they reach you, pal? That's at Levi Fletcher.
Why are we still doing this for him if he doesn't come on the show? Which I haven't heard yet of anyone. I have to check the comments. I don't know. We usually don't get comments, but I thought we'd get like one person who's like, "Where's Levi?" But I haven't yet. So I'm sorry, everybody, the Levi fans out there who didn't show up en masse. He might just show up in another stream. I just want he's just so inundated with World of Warcraft. I hope we can go back at this and like look and be like, yeah, he was gone for like 9 weeks. It was just like, he's like, I hit level cap, I'm done. But no, he wouldn't. He'd just raid. Anyway, if you want to support the show, consider going over to our Spreadshirt or over to patreon.com/criticalreviews. You can also donate to our Twitch while I'm streaming over there. I'm usually Monday afternoons, so we like to hang out, play a little bit of Monster Hunter or just other RPGs and stuff, whatever we want to feel. Yeah. Joe, anything else you want to say before we wrap up the show there?
Nothing from my end, pal.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for being on as always. It's a pleasure. And your hair looks great. It just looks so good.
Why, thank you, sir. Yeah.
There we go. A little self-indulgence. I hope people who are just listening to this are like, okay, I had to go back and check out his hair. His hair looks great. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
It's on fleek.
It's on fleek, yes. So, also, what's our hashtag going to be for this episode? What are we talking about the most? Kevin Feige? Hashtag Feige? Feige? Hashtag Feige.
Okay. So
Hashtag
you got
Feige.
to tweet at Critical Podcast, otherwise we'll miss it. for
Also,
sure.
and maybe tag Kevin in it too. Ryan's gonna be like the only person who does this. If someone else does, I am going to. You have my respect, and I will tweet something at you special. And there'll be a special tweet just for you. Anyway, thank you, Legionnaires, for hanging out with us another week. And until next week, just remember to adapt and overcome.